and welcome to Android Faithful, your weekly source for the latest news, hardware, and apps for the world of Android. I am one of your hosts, Jason Howell.
I'm Ron Richards.
And I'm Quinn Twitdow.
Hello and welcome.
Hey, friends. Hey. Mishaal is traveling, so he's not with us this week, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we're doing a little bit of a time travel thing right now.
Shift.
Although time travel sounds so much cooler.
It would be
cooler. We stepped into our DeLorean to go back in time one day because normally this podcast releases on Tuesdays, which it still is releasing on Tuesday, but normally we record it live on Tuesdays. This Tuesday, November 5th in the U.S. is Election Day, and we all kind of made the decision. We announced this on the show already, but we made the decision to record a day earlier and then release the episode on time on Election Day on Tuesday. So we did record this on the Monday, November 4th. So if we miss a single story or something like that broke between the 24 hours of our record and our release,
we'll get it next week. At the end of the day, we're talking about phones and apps and toys and things like that. So nothing major. We hope everyone in the U.S. got out and voted. By the time you're hearing this, polls will be closed. Important day in the country. So we're going to chill out and enjoy it tomorrow, but you guys still get to enjoy the show. It's funny. It's fun. Jason, we talked about this last week. We've done this show on Tuesday. We've done all about Android and this show on Tuesdays for almost 15 years now, and there's always been an election day, and this is the first one we're actually going to take off.
I mean, I gotta say, at the point of this recording, a little more than 24 hours from the time that election day is happening and underway and everything, I'm kind of happy about this decision.
It's
so I'm happy 100%. We're doing it a little bit earlier, and the part of the risk of doing a show a little bit earlier is but we haven't accumulated enough news, and let me tell you, folks, we've accumulated enough news. This week's show is packed. Doesn't matter that it's a day early.
Not only that, but we have an awesome interview at the end of the episode that I want everyone to stay tuned. If you're watching or listening, tune in. Google had some news last week in regards to Android and the release schedule for Android and new features on Gemini, things like that. And we were very, very honored that Google came to us and they wanted us to chat with key members of their team, including a very new, not new person, but a person in a new role. So stay tuned to the end of the show. We'll catch that. That's the tease for you. Also, I want to remind everybody, take a second. If you're listening to this podcast, our podcast distributor, Acast, is doing a survey and would like to know more about you. So if you have a moment, please go to bit.ly/AndroidFaithful-survey. It's quite a long URL, but that's what it is. So bit.ly/AndroidFaithful-survey. We'll put a link in the show notes. So it should show up in Pocket Cast or wherever you're listening to this, also on AndroidFaithful.com. We'd love to hear, understand more of you about the audience that help pair us with advertisers and that sort of thing. Every little bit helps. So we thank you for the time that you're taking to fill it out in advance. So thanks, everybody.
Indeed.
Cool. So with that, should we get to that aforementioned news?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, one of the rumors that has been swirling in the Android ecosystem over the past couple of months or so, better part of this year, has been the looming on the distance of XR devices coming from maybe Samsung, maybe Google, powered by Qualcomm.
Why not both?
A whole bunch of things out there. And it looks like, and there was a lot of wondering, and to give context to this, we're not talking about Google re-releasing Google Glass. There's been an interesting development coming out of Meta with that Ray-Bans partnership. I don't know if you guys have seen any of this in the wild or anything. A couple of friends of mine have the Meta Ray-Bans glasses, the XR stuff. And so that has really been, and Meta, and Facebook have really been kind of on the forefront of a wearable device that provides an XR. And just to clarify so everyone's on the same page, XR is extended reality. So it's taking the X from not E, because ER would be emergency room and nobody wants that. But so XR is like an extended reality device that is a wearable that allows you to take pictures and allows you to do all kind of cool stuff with it. And there have been rumors that Google was going to get back in the game of that. In fact, there were some rumors that Google was actually competing with Meta to get that Ray-Ban partnership. Whether or not that's true or not, who knows? But that's what I heard in the ether. But so it looks like gaining some momentum, probably not going to happen in 2024, but it's looking like 2025 could be likely for this. And the reason why we say that is two little breadcrumbs got picked up by the blogosphere out there in the world. First off, on the Samsung side, in their recent official earnings release on a slide, they have an outlook, a 2025 outlook, where they mention improved connectivity among products, including upcoming XR devices to further elevate experiences in the Galaxy ecosystem. So that means Samsung has upcoming XR devices in 2025.
Good to know.
Fascinating. Then over on the Google side of things, while Google doesn't have any announcements or anything for that, an update to the Google Play Store went out recently where if you've been on the Google Play Store and you open up an app, you see you have the opportunity to install it on more devices. Like for example, I open it up and I see my Pixel 9, I see my Pixel tablet, I see all the thing. Now you can expand, and on it you see a little headset icon next to it. And it says this XR headset is not compatible with this app. So like a XR headset is listed in Google Play Store as a potential device that an app can be installed on potentially. So does this mean that Google's got something coming in the world of XR? Probably. We've heard that it is coming. Yeah, someone does.
Someone with a partnership with Google or some sort of interaction. I mean, that doesn't just appear in the Play Store for absolutely no reason. So they're paving the way for something.
Yeah. Now, whether or not it has anything to do with the Magic Leap deal Google did, or any of the other stuff they've been doing in the space, or all that sort of stuff. Who knows? Either way, I'm excited. I want to see. I really like what Meta did with those Ray-Bans, and if I had any need to like be out there in the world, I would probably get them, but I haven't. But I would love to see what Google and Samsung do in this space for sure. So
yeah, I'm super interested in this also.
Start the rumor
but it does feel like a little whiplash, right? It's like, oh man, we've been here before, but then this is apparently going to be different. I just want to know more. I want to know more about how this differs from the things that we've seen before. And XR really, by definition, implies that this isn't just like a headset for virtual reality games, which is kind of what Google was doing when it did the Daydream devices and stuff. This is more, VR can be a part of it, but it's also about augmented reality. It's kind of the whole deal. That's why it's an extended reality sort of situation. Yep. So super curious.
Well, yeah, we'll see.
We shall.
Well, are you curious about what else you can do with Gemini?
Always. Life is better with Gemini, let me tell you.
I just want Gemini to officially replace Assistant in all the little ways. That's my random thought.
That's a good thought, Jason. And I have good news for you, because the gemification or Geministension, that sounds awful.
It's a Gemininomicon.
Gemininomicon. I love it.
Gemininomicon.
Klaatu, Barata,
Niktu, Barada, yeah.
Anyway,
those are
now
also the names of Jabba's guards on the skiff in the Return of the Jedi. Is Klaatu, Barada, Niktu? Is they're all So anyway,
seriously, I didn't know that.
There's some sci-fi nerdery for you. When Luke and Han are on the skiffs being pushed into the Sarlacc pit, the guards are a bunch of them are Barada, Niktu, Klaatu, like all those names. Yeah,
that's a trivia night question that you shouldn't ask Ash from Evil Dead. But yes, the gemification does continue whether we enchant magical words or not. And Google is continuing to roll out more Gemini extensions. In fact, some of them for various Android apps, and the first third-party extension for WhatsApp. So they're gradually releasing these extensions, and they're basically ways of using Gemini to activate different, features within not just WhatsApp, but also Google Home, phone, and messages. And they will replace the current Google Assistant fallback. So we're going to get a little bit more of consistency and kind of homogenization of, the way that we interact now with our assistants, which is now officially Gemini. And I think it's really interesting because, it's not just replacing the old, hey, G, and the very kind of rote call blank and hoping that it, the command gets through. There really is that Gemini, latest version of AI, kind of more conversational, more natural language processing. So with WhatsApp, you'll have, basically a lot of different ways of saying make a call and send a message. And just, not just one strict way of saying it, but you can kind of say something like, and they give it, I think in 9 to 5 Google gives, Abner Lee gives an example of, I need to talk to, insert your contact's name. Can you call them on WhatsApp? So it's not just like, call.
Make call to.
Make
blah,
call
blah,
to.
blah.
Yeah, it's not so rigid. And that's WhatsApp. And of course, you can also do it through text messaging.
But here's the deal. But here's the deal is that like, I don't think I'd open up Gemini and say, I need to call Jason. Can you call them on what? It's the casual conversational nature is never, it's when you're doing it with something that's not real, it's transactional.
Right? I agree to a point, and then I will also push back because in my experience in recent months, I'd say, with the AI that I interact with, I don't know if maybe I'm alone in this, but I sometimes, I will blank when someone is standing in front of me and I've known them for a very long time, and I will suddenly have moments where I cannot remember your name.
Oh, that's every week I have to remind you who I am.
Right. Yeah. Well, see, there you go. And so when it comes to making commands to a voice AI or whatever, if there is a syntax to follow, I am not guaranteed to remember the syntax in that moment. But what I can do is I can talk my way around and weave through it to eventually give enough information to get the thing. And I've noticed that in the last couple of months in my interaction with AI, and it's become kind of one of my favorite things where it's like, I don't know how to ask this question. So I'm just going to rattle off a bunch of things I do know about it, and it can infer what I'm actually looking for. And it does really well. And so that's what I see this through. It's kind of like...
That's an interesting angle. I mean, I guess my concern is that Gemini and even ChatGPT and stuff, I read an article, a woman in the New York Times handed her life to ChatGPT for a week and had it make all the decisions and things like that, like what they should cook and all that sort of stuff, like the family stuff. It was really... It was really interesting. I'll send you the link if you didn't see it. It was interesting.
No, I didn't see that.
But I don't get the feeling like I'm talking to someone else on the side. Maybe it's my age and maybe it's my, input output kind of nature, but I feel like I'm working with a tool, and so I'm using as much direct language as possible and not casual language. And it's not because the tools can't do that. It's because I don't feel the feedback loop coming back to me as I'm talking to another person or something. I don't know when you're designing, you're working with these interfaces. Maybe I'm wrong, but
I mean, I'm kind of more on Jason's side. I also tend to treat G historically as if they were a person, just because I'm ready for the AI overlords. I'm trying to show the respect for the AI overlords. You're not going to Megan me over here up. Or whoever. Yeah, I'm kissing up. But it's interesting you say that wrong because what I think is interesting. So that what I just mentioned is more like kind of WhatsApp style, and that's like a third party. But if we actually kind of look into what, say, Google is doing on its more native apps, there is actually more of a kind of conversational feedback loop. And in cases, for example, for actually Google Messages and Google Home, they're kind of added. There are extensions where, you can kind of, based on your conversation. Wait, okay, yeah. So along with Messages and phones, there is kind of a feedback loop where it isn't just, maybe you're rambling and you're like, oh yeah, hey, call, my, whatever, my husband or something, yada, yada. There's actually kind of basically taking the context of a conversation. So say if you're in Messages or something and you're chatting with your wife about what restaurant you want to eat tonight or you want to order delivery from, you can actually, kind of use that to feed into a further command. It's like, hey, call, this restaurant or something like that. Or, if you're asking, G to help you find, G is in Gemini or G is in Google, if you're having them, Abner, let's say buying a new car over the phone, you can actually ask more things like that are kind of in that prompt that requires a lot of more complex searching and then synthesizing of information. And then after that, in the context of that searching and requesting from Gemini, call that dealership or call that specific dealership and things like that. So there is, for the official Google stuff where presumably they have more integration with all of the apps, you will have that more feedback loop. And I think that is kind of the secret sauce and the magic that they're trying to get with Gemini, just like with Gemini Live and everything else. It's kind of like taking Gemini Live and then sticking it not just necessarily in a static screen, but kind of across all of your communication experiences throughout Google. So you can even say things like, call, like, again, more examples in Abner's article of like, hey, call, the closest Chinese restaurant. Can you call, like, I don't know, the YMCA. I don't think YMCA comes in. YMCA because the song's in my head. So yeah, and other things like that is like Google Home integration. With, basically, again, letting Gemini take over some of your Google Home controls, turn lights on, dim them, being able to use like the different like room names or like device names to turn them on and off, thermostats, controlling your home client, and again, like all kinds of different ways of like adjusting the thermostat that aren't quite so rigid and a little more fully featured. Closing blinds, media devices, and other smart home devices. So if you're, a very connected person on Google Home, if you're spending a lot of time in WhatsApp or messages and phones and kind of finding yourself in these kind of conversations, eventually you might be able to kind of invoke Gemini to kind of like take those conversations and take that communications, into further action without having to yourself, do the work of, looking up the restaurant's number and letting Gemini take over it for you, letting it be your assistant for realsies.
I mean, this is what we've wanted from when it rolled out, right? I mean, like this is the evolution of Gemini, and Jason, to your point earlier, take over what Assistant did. Like if it is Gemini, it needs to do stuff like this.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, one of the examples they gave is the sun is too bright in the living room. And then that would be the inference that the Google Home would need to close the window coverings, which is interesting, but I'm not, totally.
Again, it's just like...
I don't want to ask for the thing. I just want to tell you. I just want to complain.
There goes back to a scripted, forced experience that happens with Google in these demos and these examples to illustrate what it can be done versus how it's actually done. What I want to see at the next Google I/O, by the way, this is what I want to see at the next Google I/O or next Made by Google event, is not one of those slick, pre-produced, following someone through their life and how they use Gemini and it's all the perfect cues. I want the reality show version. Send a documentary crew with somebody out on the weekend and see how they use Gemini in real life and how it works in real kind of reality situations. Because I'm not going to say, oh, it's getting kind of dark in here, and then expect the lights to go up. I'm going to say, turn the lights up. It's I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, but it happens with we got to coin a term for it. But there's a false Instagram-esque, nothing on Insta is real, right?
Yeah.
Nothing in a Google demo is real, and that's what drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
The anticipatory type of like the reactionary like actions are a little bit not creepy, but a little bit weird to me because I can imagine just saying that as an offhand comment and then being a little surprised when the lights dim or the shades come down. I do think that hey, let's look for restaurants and then have Google call, that's an intentional thing, right? I'm not exactly invoking a specific command, but I'm already in the flow of an intention and knowledge seeking. And so that's just an extra feature. But yeah, I do get you that if I say, hey, it's bright in here and all of a sudden all my studio lights go off, I would have a problem. And I do think that is weird. And it is have that kind of artificiality of like the slick, but very staged demo.
Right.
That is a good point.
I want the reality version. So,
okay.
Anyway.
Google might not want you to have the reality version.
Well, yeah.
They're like, that plan we had where we sent the documentary crew with that family for the weekend? We've trashed all the footage.
Well, I mean, you can edit the footage, but just give me realistic examples. That's all. Yeah. So,
there was nothing usable.
You'd be a new VHS movie, like AI, when assistants go bad.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there we go. Okay. Android Headlines has insight into the next major version of Samsung's OS, Samsung OneUI 7. And this isn't the first that we've heard about this. It was actually teased at the Samsung Developer Conference last month. But Android Headlines says that they have some details anyways about what you can expect on the update. New icons, so redesigned to make things stand out a little bit more, make a little more sense. I feel like home screen UIs have to redesign the icons every 3 or 4 years just to say that they did it.
It's a refresh.
See, things look fresher. They just look different, Do they look better? I don't know. Maybe a little bit more three-dimensional, I guess,
I think another thing is like they're all distinct colors and flat.
Yeah.
I think, they were like calling out Google because Google has to put the Google colors on everything. But I guess they're trying to, I don't know.
A lot of Google icons do still look a lot alike. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was their unification approach. And then at a certain point, it was like, God, I'm looking at a screen full of these things that have the same 4 colors and they're all circular. And anyways. So I'm sure Google will do that at some point. So Samsung's doing that, beating them to the punch. A supposed, quote, enhanced lock screen, no details on what that might mean. Smart notification management, no details on what that might mean. Homework help, though, for Circle to Search. This was actually first announced at Google I/O 2024, just last year, or no, earlier this year. Sorry, it's not next year yet. And so this would be for, getting homework help with like math, physics, history problems. It doesn't do the problem for you, but it points you to videos, explainers, results that can actually assist you in doing it for yourself. Because I'm sure that they might not get into trouble with, legally or anything, if they were to just solve the problems for you. But I'm sure users would not appreciate it, especially parents. Users.
Well, how do y'all feel about this generally? Just hot take on it.
I don't mind, given that it is more of a tool that gives you the pathway to the answer instead of just wholesale giving you the answer.
Show me your work. Do the work.
Yeah. Because honestly, my daughter, she's got a Chromebook. She does her, sometimes I sit in with her when she's having troubles with her math and everything. And even the tool, and it's all done on the computer now, right? Like you're not getting these assignments and like doing it longhand. I mean, sometimes you are in your scrapbook, but it's not like they're giving you printouts. Like, here's your assignment. It's all online in her case. And even those online materials have a separate section that is like, if you get it wrong a couple of times, then it gives you this kind of like expanded learning area where you watch a video and it shows you kind of the walkthrough. And so this is kind of the same thing. Yeah. Just done through Circle to Search. Right? Yeah. So it doesn't bug me. New parental controls, so location tracking, approved deny sites and apps, that sort of stuff, which I'm honestly kind of surprised that Samsung didn't have this. I feel like Samsung being we do all the things, that everybody else does and more, that they didn't have a parental control section. I guess I never looked into it, but apparently they didn't. So photo features, so things like live effects for depth in pictures, AI restyling, AI zoom, so AI enhancing on the 100x zoom coming. Sketch to image is going to get some enhancements. Also, as far as fitness is concerned, the energy score is getting some sort of an update. Sorry, my voice is going apparently. So some sort of update coming to energy score. And this is all rolling out as a beta if you're signed up for the OneUI 7 beta, which I'm not even sure you can get signed up. I tried signing up this morning and I'm not seeing the area to do that, but it's going to roll out to testers by the middle of this month, released to everyone early next year.
Exciting news for Samsung folks. For sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Indeed.
Cool. Well, that is not all the news this week. Like we said earlier, there was a lot of news about Android and the release schedule and new features, as well as changes in the staffing. We're going to talk about some hardware. We're going to talk about some apps, and then we're going to go back to that news and then hear our interview with the folks at Google. So just another reminder, there's more news in this episode, important from Google. But first, we want to thank all of the patrons who support Android Faithful over on Patreon at patreon.com/Android Faithful. Every week, patrons get to vote to pick on a story for us to talk about. We didn't do it this week, though, but that doesn't mean we don't love our patrons. And in fact, we posted an update to Patreon about there being no patron pick, and the updated schedule for this week. And we included a lovely bug droid, a timely bug droid that was submitted by listener Clint McCullough, who really poured salt in the wound of a bug droid in a Dodgers uniform celebrating at Dodger Stadium with a crowd, which I assume Eileen Rivera is in there with them, celebrating the Dodgers World Series win. This is a very, very specific, timely bug droid, and so we thank Clint for sending that in. And you can go to patreon.com/AndroidFaithful. You don't need to be a member or a supporting patron to see this image, by the way, this week. It's there. I posted it in the free feed, so everybody can see this awesome bug droid. And if you're a Dodger fan, congratulations. And I'm going to stop talking about baseball because I'm sad because my Mets didn't make it.
Well, sorry, just last week I was hanging out with my friend J-Rod, John Rodriguez, who's a big member of the community and also a Yankees fan. And he stayed up until 3 a.m. to watch the Yankees game.
That's a bummer.
Yep. And then the next day, whatever ticket app he uses for baseball games sent him a notification. It's like, hey, do you want Dodgers tickets? Do you? And he's just like, again, it's also salt in the wound. So
yeah, it's pretty rough. But we do, what is not rough is our awesome patrons. So we want to thank Antonio Michael, Darren, Ken Carlson, Thomas Nielsen from Denmark. I always love when we have international folks. And Thomas A. Thank you all for your support. Go to patreon.com/AndroidFaithful if you're not supporting the show. We'd love to, help us keep the lights on here. If you sign up, you get access to an ad-free version of the podcast. You can get a sticker. You get a T-shirt at the different levels. It's pretty awesome. So go check it out at patreon.com/AndroidFaithful. All right. So that's thank you, patrons. And we'll be back next week with the patron pick. So
Indeed. All right. Coming up here in a second, we're going to talk about some pretty good stream of hardware news. A good stream. We're going to open up the tap and let the hardware news just pour right out.
Let's double click that.
Starting with you and what you
yes, and we finally have it. The OnePlus 13 has poured out. It is here. Well, at least in China, it is here. It will eventually come to international markets, but we've been talking a little bit about it here and there, taking little leaky peekies at it. But yes, the OnePlus 13 is here, rocking the Snapdragon 8 Elite, Snapdragon 8 Elite.
There you go.
Which would have been the Snapdragon 8 Gen 4. Sorry, it's like
that's where the trip up happened.
It is the Snapdragon 8 Gen 4, but it's the Elite. It's Elite, and also coming with a flagship BOE display. It is a beautiful phone. It's got it. I just love that every year we switch between curved or uncurved, flat curve. That OnePlus 13 is a flat display. The specs are pretty banging. And yeah, there's just a lot here. It's a beautiful phone coming in 3 colorways, black, blue, and white. It has that lovely display with 1440p resolution, 120 variable hertz refresh rate, 800 to 4500 nits brightness, as well as the ultrasonic fingerprint scanner. And in terms of other specs, this thing is kind of just packed, y'all. It actually does one up most other phones in being IP69 rating instead of IP68. That IP69 rating means that it actually has support against high pressure liquids and steam cleaning.
We talked about that last week on the show.
Okay, my bad.
The difference, no, it's okay. The difference between IP68 and IP69, because we all assumed that they were the same, but 68 is for the water submersion, but 69 is jet streams of water and dust protection.
So you can have both.
You can have both.
So if you're pressure washing your car. Anyway, the camera is fully packed, 50 megapixels across the 3 units in the back, which we have talked about. And the design, the kind of slightly different design where the Hasselblad logo is kind of very sexily now out of the actual bump and into the side, a very little racing stripe. It's not a racing stripe, but it's a little stripe in the corner.
Looks racing stripey.
The front-facing camera, not shabby either, at 32 megapixels. It's got a big battery, y'all. It's got a 6,000 milliamp battery, and not only that, it'll charge pretty quickly as well with 100-watt wired charging and 50-watt wireless charging. And oh my gosh, it has storage and memory if you want it. There are configurations in 12, 16, and 24 gigabytes of RAM.
And 1 terabyte of storage.
And up to a terabyte of storage. All the goodies, y'all. Color OS, Android 15 based flavor from OnePlus. It is on sale now in China. Sale started in November 1st with international availability going to be detailed later. In terms of pricing, if you were to buy it, if you could buy it right now, you got pricing starting at about 4,500 yuan, which is like 632 USD, kind of for like the base, like the basest specs, all the way up to $842 USD. That's about 6,000 yuan for the pack and 24 gigabytes of RAM and 1 terabyte storage model, which is not that bad, honestly, for those kind of specs. I mean, 840 is not cheap, but for a flagship, that's packing. Yeah, so we'll see whenever it comes out to international markets if anybody can get their hands on it.
Usually the China release happens before the international/US release by like a month or two, right?
Yeah,
Like
usually,
if we go back from the previous
soon.
OnePlus kind of experience, so maybe we'll see something before the new year. We'll see. We'll cross our fingers. I think this phone is hot. This is a good release, I think. So I'm excited to see it.
If I get my hands on one of these phones at some point, I might just have to go outside with my pressure washer, my power washer. That'll be my differentiated review.
Get all the dust out. Yeah.
Can I power
iron.
wash it and it still works? No, I would never do that to you, OnePlus 13. Don't walk away.
It's I mean, it's got the protection. It's at the IP69, so it was like, yeah, I could do that. So.
Yeah, please. I need a shower. Interesting. All right. That was like 3 solid weeks of OnePlus 13. It was like
boom. Yeah. Yep.
Oh boy, their marketing worked. There is the potential of a slim Galaxy S25 coming out sometime next year. This, according to Sam Mobile, anyways, or actually, I think they were citing ET News as the kind of the beginnings of the report that says that the S25 update could have a slim edition release. Expected to release a few months after the standard release. So the S25, the S25 Plus, and the Ultra would release, and then a few months later would come the slim version, potentially. This is early next year. Samsung reportedly using this as a test to see if it should continue to do this for following years' releases. And actually, they've done this before. We talked about it not too many weeks ago about the Galaxy Z Fold Special Edition, which was a slimmer version of that phone. So this would be kind of trying that out on the handheld. And I didn't realize this, apparently, because I don't follow Apple rumors, but apparently Apple rumors suggest a slim iPhone 17 in the comings for next year too. So apparently it's a trend.
So you're the slim?
Yeah, it's this.
I mean, it goes back to when you asked my wife what kind of phone she wants. She wants a small phone, right?
Yeah.
Like that, you know, and she used to get the iPhone, the SE, that's then they got rid of, and all this sort of stuff. So is thin the new trend for small, or
well, yeah. So I wonder, for someone like your wife who really wants a small phone, like, would this qualify as small for her?
Right.
She's
if
like,
not
no,
as
but
long,
it's still big,
thinner.
you know?
Yeah.
And you got to wonder what it does to the battery life, because we all know that the thickness of the phone is directly how big of a honking battery or not in there, and like battery life is what everybody wants out of everything. So yeah.
Yes. At the same time, God, I don't know if I have this information at hand here. Give me 1 second, because I feel like, oh yeah, we were just talking about it. The OnePlus 13. So the OnePlus 13, that 6,000 milliamp hour battery is a silicon carbon battery. And what that allows for, it's a different type of battery technology that actually allows for more density in a smaller amount of space. So you end up with a slimmer phone while still having, in that case, 6,000 milliamp hour battery. So there you go. You know, like now the companies are experimenting or playing around with some of these other alternatives to just traditional lithium ion to kind of show that you know what you just said, which has for a very long time been true.
Yep.
Maybe it's not necessarily true in the future if they're using these different types of batteries.
I've been saying for years that the foldables have been awesome. We all know how I love foldables, but if you ask me, the single biggest advancement in phone design that can happen would be around the battery.
Yeah.
And if there could be some sort of breakthrough, and there was limited because it's chemistry and it's like specifics, you know, materials and stuff like that. But if they can break through with these different kind of things and get and less space for a battery, it opens the doors to so many different new kind of devices. So
yeah. Totally agree. Yeah.
All right.
So we could see it.
Okay.
Yes.
Fun. All right. What's next? Tablets. I love it. We talked last week about the massive leak. Linky Pinky.
Linky Pinky.
Linky Pinky. We talked about a massive leak coming out of Google from their chips division around the future of the Tensor chip line, and the revelations from those leaks continue. The folks over at Android Authority, who were the recipients of that leak, added some information about what the Pixel tablet might be impacted by the Tensor chip changes that are happening. Apparently, in the leaked materials around the Tensor G6 chip, they said they're going to be adding a second USB-C port controller to the chip, and that port supports external displays via DisplayPort and is actually initially designed and meant for tablets. And so the thought is that will the Pixel Tablet 3 have the Tensor G6 and then be positioned as more of a productivity, working device? Google, in all the kind of leaks and designs and stuff like that have come out, it seems as if they're still on board with the base dock kind of feature, but having that second USB-C port to allow a display could move this over into the productivity laptop replacement kind of category. So that's pretty interesting to see what it might do. Especially in a world where Apple has had so much success with that iPad Pro, that larger iPad, are they going to try to do a Google tablet of that, kind of that same kind of approach? Or not.
A world where you can connect up to 4 external displays.
Wouldn't that be amazing? And then additionally, with the Tensor chip rumors, there was also what the impact to the Pixel Tablet 3 or the Pixel 11A in 2027 might be. We don't even have the 9A yet, but we're talking about the Pixel 11A already, which is just wild. But the thought being that the Tensor G6 would be applied to the Pixel 11A and Pixel Tablet 3, and that it would actually have a version of the Tensor G6 with parts of the TPU of the processor turned off, so they would be not as powerful processor chips, users of the Tensor G6, but would be more adapted and positioned better for an 11A phone, the tablet, as well as the watch down the line. So
was I misreading this? But did it sound like they were also, in a sense, like upcycling or using like chips that would normally be rejected? Because I guess I was trying to read. It sounded like almost like they were recycling or upcycling like rejected chips, and
right.
that's why they would have to fuse parts. The
article actually says Google's considering fusing off defective parts of the TPU to save chips that would normally have been discarded. So if you've got Tensor G6 chips that have damaged TPUs, they would just section that part off and still use the chip. Which is kind of like, is that upcycling or cross-cycling or what?
I don't know what there's some kind of cycling. It's almost like if you have a cookie cutter and you kind of didn't quite get the shape you wanted, you just changed your, unicorn into a horse or something. I don't know. Kind of like that. I don't know.
So interesting stuff though. The lots of, basically the roadmap for Google's hardware is defined by that Tensor chip development, and this leak appears to have laid out the next 2 years plus of what we're going to see. So
Pixel 11A, I'm calling it, the camera bump on the Pixel 11A is going to be triangular.
Oh, there we go.
That would actually be kind of cool.
and it'll be an obtuse triangle.
Okay. Well, hey, turn our time machine around. Turn the DeLorean around. Let's go to the future.
Let's go to the future.
And see this.
November 5th, 2025. Okay, and finally, the Boox Palma. Is it Boox or is it Boox? I think it's Boox because
I think it's Boox.
Honestly, the device is, the company is all about e-readers. So the Boox Palma is getting a successor. The original Palma, I would say, really became in this year, anyways, sort of a viral hit. It's like it had all these, it's not quite mainstream, but it has been discovered multiple times over the past year and then rediscovered, by a new author who does a review. Is like, oh my God, this thing is awesome. And then suddenly it gets all this attention again. So it's been on a roller coaster ride. So they have apparently, I don't know if they've sped up their design process to get out the sequel, but that certainly they're putting it out here soon. The new version will have a faster, quote, octa-core CPU. Remember when that was like the news in
Yep.
all about Android? It was like, oh, octa-core. Oh, it's going to be amazing. It has the word octa-core in it. But it doesn't really reveal anything about the processor. We have no idea, but it's, it is meant to reduce the lag, which if you have the original, I have it. It's downstairs. I should have brought it here for B-roll purposes, but it does get a little laggy at times. It's not running the most high-end hardware. Also, the new version will be running Android 13, which is not the most up-to-date version of Android, but a heck of a lot better than Android 11, which is what the original Boox Palma is running. And that's certainly one of the big downsides of the original. People are wondering, actually got this question to one of my videos a couple of days ago. It was like, how long is the Kindle app going to work on this, on the Boox Palma? And I'm like, well, I don't know the answer. I imagine that Amazon would, keep an app like that open for as far back as possible. But there is a cutting off point. There is a cutoff point. And so if you're on Android 13 on a new device, you're likely to get a lot more lifetime out of it. And then it will have a fingerprint sensor in the power button. So the original one didn't have any sort of security model, at least built into the hardware. Yeah. And so this will have that. So there you go. The new Boox Palma 2.
My buddy who got that swears by it, loved it. So
yeah, it's great.
So
it's great. It was really great in Italy because it is an e-reader, but it also is small enough that it didn't take up much space at all, and it was great. I could have it with me. It was great on the beach. Yeah.
I love that we talk about all these AI things and, like the pimped out, that's the kitted out, sorry. Is that not appropriate to say anymore? The kitted out OnePlus 13, but then e-ink devices are still as relevant and popular as ever.
They have a use case that they are perfect for, It's great to read on an e-ink device. It just is. Yeah. Yep. Compared to a screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, moving on to the apps.
Yeah, we got some apps, and in fact, are currently in transit. Mishaal Rahman has a really great write-up about a whole bunch of new Play Store features, in fact, that will make it easier to engage, discover, and purchase new apps on the Play Store. So there's a lot of things going on in Google Play, just kind of rolling through them. Full screen portrait videos is actually really fascinating to me, especially as a dev and as someone who, has had to gather marketing materials for whoever manages the Google Play Store. Listing, traditionally, if you had a vertical video on your Google Play Store listing, it would just show kind of in a weird landscape box. It still does when it's zoomed in, but zoomed out, you can actually view any portrait videos on your Play Store listing. In actual portrait mode without it being letterboxed. And Google says that actually the portrait videos drive 7% increase in total watch time and 9% increase in video completions and 5% increase in conversion, which is kind of a big deal. These are all the kind of things that people want to hear when it comes to, the way that we kind of present listings on the Google Play Store. And it makes a lot of sense, though, because generally when you're buying apps or purchasing or downloading and purchasing apps, you're using your phone and your phone's in portrait. So this makes a lot of sense. What other new discovery features they have? Personalized search query recommendations. So basically based on any previous apps that you have downloaded or purchased, you're going to start getting kind of little chips that show kind of guesses at what you would be searching for next. So if you, for example, tower defense games, which in fact I do, or if you've been downloading, I don't know, weather radar apps or anything else like that lately, Google Play will remember that and try to present these back to you in case you're looking for another one of those. But yeah, basically based on your kind of previous searches, what are you looking for today, and trying to help you out with that. And kind of to go along with that is multi-select interest filters. And these are basically little, not just singular filters, but you can actually add a bunch of different kind of genre and interest to narrow down your apps. So if you're looking for not just say, I don't know, a tower defense game, but a horror, I don't know, Pokemon tower defense game, you could presumably select a bunch of things together and kind of narrow down your searches, just because there are so many stinking apps in the Google Play Store these days. It kind of makes sense to kind of give you more ways of filtering down and narrowing down what you want. In terms of the payment commerce side, there's a lot of, expansions. And a lot of these are kind of, again, for engagement, for kind of conversion, the big C word, not a bad C word, but a good C word, at least, especially when it comes to like marketing and sales folks. Proactive payment setup. Google tweaked its kind of onboarding flow to kind of encourage users to set up a payment as they're onboarding onto the Google Play Store, and they've seen apparently 3% conversion rate, which is kind of huge depending on how big your app and your company is. Expanded payment options. You can now use Cash App e-wallet, as well as if we have any Polish listeners, you can now use Blik banking alongside credit cards, PayPal, direct carrier billing, and gift cards to pay for your content. Also, purchase flow recommendations. So there actually will now be included relevant in-app purchases in kind of Google's recommendations engine. And so if you're I don't know, playing your favorite game that needs some kind of like, I don't know, timer boosts or power up bundles or something, you will actually get recommended them by Google Play. And again, like preliminary data has shown that Google shows a 3% increase in spend for, I guess, apps that include in-app purchases when kind of utilizing this new algorithmic recommendation engine. As someone who buys way too many timer boosts in Duolingo, I'm very much looking forward to that. There's, just like any other now retail app that when you leave your cart empty and haven't finished that purchase, they send you a friendly email saying, hey, forgot something? Google Play is going to start doing that with cart abandonment reminders. So if you started a purchase and haven't completed, they'll be like, hey, did you want this? Did you want this? Because you can have it for some money. But yeah, these reminders will show up when you're browsing the Play Store at a later time. You can opt out of these, by the way, if that's not your thing. Totally opt-outable. Is that the... Anyway.
That works.
Yeah.
That works. Biometric authentication can be enabled by default to pay for content. And again, Google said, "Hey, this works." They've seen tripling of authentication for checkouts in 2024 alone. And finally, security, privacy, always important things. In terms of like the Play Integrity API, which is again one of the Play Store APIs that is meant to kind of scan and look for risks. There will now be hardware-backed security signals. A lot of devices have a hardware security module, which is a kind of on-device module that kind of helps with like different kind of encryptions and security things. There will be hardware-backed security signals that allow basically that if you opt in, Google can just more faster and more reliably verify, that apps are privacy friendly and that are, just safe to use, making it significantly harder and more costly for, bad actors to bypass. And then new app access risk feature. This is basically an API that allows developers, I'm guessing say something like you are an app that handles sensitive user information, like a bank. You can actually connect to an API that allows you as a developer to assess if there are any risky apps that the user has downloaded that might be attempting to steal information, and let the user know, hey, you've got some sketchy stuff. Just be careful. Maybe check stuff out before you start, handling secure or rather sensitive data on your phone. So there you go. That was written by our Mishaal Rahman and can be found in detail on our website, androidfaithful.com. So check that out. Very
cool.
The skinny.
Yeah, thank you, Mishaal, for that. There was a big week last week on Thursday, October 31st, from Google with a whole bunch of news. That was just one piece of it. Some additional pieces coming out of it around updates to Google Maps and Waze and Google Earth. Surprise, surprise, they're all getting Gemini conversational integration.
Gemininomicon.
The Gemininomicon. Sorry.
Gemininomicon. So I'll just be real quickly on these, but you can go into Google Maps. You can get location-based inspiration curated by Gemini. So if you're looking for a place to go, you're looking for things around the place you're going, Gemini will curate that, as well as a conversational approach to interacting with maps, and a major update to immersive view. So if you're into immersive view, you can get lost in Google Maps, which is a lot of fun. And then over on Waze, they also have speak naturally to report road incidents. So conversational road reporting, saying, hey, I think there's a crash over there. And then also they're adding school zones on their maps, which is actually very helpful because you should slow down in a school zone. My kids thank you for it. And lastly, Google Earth is getting generative AI They're providing tools for developers who use Google Earth to also get generative AI data about locations to implement in their applications. They're also putting in AI summaries of places in Rivian vehicles. So if you have a Rivian, and that partnership between Google and Rivian continues and looks pretty cool. And then lastly, and this made me laugh, they said, bringing generative AI capabilities to Google Earth. And it's like, what are you gonna make new continents? But the example they gave was pretty interesting. They said, imagine a transportation planner who wants to install new electric vehicle chargers in their city. All they need to do is ask, can you map the 5 zip codes with the fewest EV chargers relative to their geographic area size? And Google Earth will do all the work and give them the output of that. That's pretty cool for urban planners and large scale kind of things like that. There's so much data that Google has amassed in location across the Maps and Earth platforms. AI might be the best way to kind of bring that out. So some really interesting stuff there.
I did want to bring up, we did have an email, I think early this year or maybe last year, where a listener tried to use ChatGPT when they were in France to get like transit information in Normandy. And I think the route was incorrect because the track was missing. And a lot of these updates are grounded, and they said that very specifically in Google Maps data. So rather than being kind of this freeform thing like ChatGPT, it does try to ground it in the data. So hopefully we're getting to that point where you can actually ask something like a generative AI assistant like Gemini a thing, but it's still, again, kind of checked through existing real life data. So I don't know, take another trip to France. Whoever that was, I'm so sorry I couldn't find the email, but maybe it's better now.
Yeah.
Perhaps so. That's cool. Some of those changes coming to Maps. We talk a lot about Maps getting bloated and everything like that, but like there's one thing in Maps that has always been irritating to me, and I feel like at one point this wasn't the way, and then they made a change at some point, I don't know how many years ago, where I'm navigating to a place and then I'm getting to the place and then it says that I've gotten to the place and it removes the thing entirely. And I'm like, well, wait, no, I didn't see it. Like, where is it? Is it that? Is it that? And it seems like some of these changes that they made kind of keep that in the pocket, and especially like going, and the parking for this place is right over there. Do you want to go there? Yeah, sure. Like that's super useful. So some bloat in Maps for sure. But there's also some really great features still being developed.
They're actively, I feel like over the past couple of months, at least once a month, we've talked about an update to Maps. And like they're just doing so much on this stuff. So it's great to see what they do.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. I'm not a Windows user. Like I have a Windows computer, rarely use it. I have no real need to. It's just not part of, my workflow in any way, shape, or form. But I know that there are a lot of you out there, Android users, who have a Windows 10 or 11 laptop or computer or whatever. You might be happy to hear about this update to the cross-device experience service. It has a new feature called Android in File Explorer, and essentially it works over Wi-Fi to connect the Android device that you're using to Windows 10 and Windows 11 as if it was plugged in directly via USB, and it shows up in the File Explorer, so you can do all the things that you would expect. You can browse, you can copy, delete, etc., that sort of stuff. You can manage the phone files inside of the File Explorer. If you actually delete a file from your phone, for example, it's going to appear in a recycle bin folder on the phone that's then purged after 30 days. So it's kind of, kind of bringing some cool kind of interoperability features between Windows 10 and 11 and the Android device that you're using. You do need an Android 11 or newer device. You need to have the latest Link to Windows app installed, and make sure that the cross-device experience host is updated in the Microsoft Store. Some of this is Greek to me because I don't live in this world, but this article on windowslatest.com does point out you do not need the Phone Link app in order to make this work, even though it seems like that would be the right app. It's more of like a system sort of thing that Microsoft is staging in its rollout. So if you don't have the opportunity to do this yet, you will eventually. Just be patient. So yeah, kind of nice. Cool. Not have to plug in your phone to get access to all those files.
It's living in the future stuff. So I respect that.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, and finally, any Thunderbird fans might be super excited. Thunderbird fans from back in the day. Well, guess what? Yeah, the Thunderbird Mail for Android is finally out, y'all. Development for Thunderbird for Android began in 2022, and the final version is out. This was this started off as the K9 mail client, a popular open source.
My OG mail client on Android. I used K9.
K9?
Remember the icon was the little robot dog? Like I used that for years, man. Yeah.
Yeah, Mozilla acquired the rights for K9 and we're working to rebrand it as the kind of look like a phoenix. The Thunderbird, we rebranded as a Thunderbird app. It is out now. Give it a try. It is privacy focused and has a lot of great features like adding open PGP email encryption. I'm sure as heck going to give it a try. Old school Thunderbird user here. But yeah, give it a shot for all.
Yeah,
you fans
I'm definitely going to download this and check it out because I love Thunderbird back in the day. Yeah, so
Thunderbird and Firefox. That was me for many years.
Yeah, like 2006, 2007. Like that was my jam. Yep. So good stuff.
That somehow I lost out on that trend. I did not get in.
What
on
were
the
you
Thunderbolt
using back?
thing.
What was your email client back in 2006? You were at CNET. When you were at CNET, what you use Outlook?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Outlook.
What about
Outlook.
personal email?
We had
you on,
Gmail at that point, right?
Were you on Gmail or were you on Yahoo or Hotmail or anything like that?
I'm trying to remember when I transitioned because I was on Yahoo for a very long time.
Yeah.
But I did transition over. It was probably later than that. I was probably still on Yahoo actually.
Yeah.
At 2006. Yeah.
So what's funny is that I skipped Yahoo, Hotmail, AOL that time period because I had my own servers. So I had a long time all about Android and Android faithful listeners remember my POP3 woes, right?
Yeah.
When I had I had like multiple email addresses on POP3 POP3 servers that I finally migrated over to Gmail back in like 2016 or so. Like when I did that switch. So.
I forgot about that.
That's so awesome, Ron.
I love POP3. It was great. I knew how to. I could work in that with that protocol. It was awesome. So. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for apps. We're going to take a quick break and then come back with our interview with Google. And as part of that news blitz on last week on October 31st, we had not only did we cover all the news over on AndroidFaithful.com, and you can go check it out. Some quick highlights from that, though. Mishaal broke down all the updates, basically changes in the release schedule, how they're going to be adapting from the current plan that we've had the past couple of years to more frequent SDK releases, how that'll impact developers, and then a whole bunch of news about Gemini AI and things like that. But the biggest news was we got confirmation that Android 16's code name is Baklava. Which we're very excited about. So all that news dropped last week, but Google invited us to have a great chat. And actually, Win, you and Mishaal had the chat, right?
Yeah, we did. So I actually was in London, so I was recording from my hotel room. But yeah, we had a wonderful chat with a friend of the show, Matthew McCullough, who is the VP of Android developers. So he's basically like the head
VP of Android developer experience.
Yeah. So he's like the top DevRel guy. And we had a very special guest, Seang Chau, who is, I don't want to take away from Seang, but basically he's taking over for David Burke as the VP and GM of Android now. Yep. And so this was really special. I think this was, can I say it was fairly exclusive? I think maybe us and maybe and one other outlet got to talk to Seang and Matthew in this role. And they had a big developer push actually at DroidCon London. They had a big episode of the Android show where they kind of did the whole glitz and production around things. So, but we got a little bit of time with Matthew and Seang to talk about a little bit about Seang and a lot about the new things upcoming, like the release schedule and Gemini.
And you got to hang out with Matthew at DroidCon, right?
Yeah,
we have a photo of that for our video viewers if we want to see that before we roll the interview. Yeah.
Matthew was actually in Milan. Matthew was actually in Milan, but then 2 days later he was in London, and I actually went to Rahman Gee's talk and I saw Matthew sitting down there. So I was plopped down, hey, Matthew, nice to see you in person. So yeah, it was really great.
Nice.
And we got to chat. Matthew is an amazing person, and he cares so much about the developer community. He's amazing.
He was and I got to watch this interview. Obviously, we released this interview on YouTube last Thursday because we wanted to time it with the news. But those of you who might not have caught that, we wanted to roll it here on the podcast. But in watching it, I was really impressed with both Matthew and really impressed also with Seang. Those are big shoes to step into after Dave Burke's tenure. Sure. And it looks like he's up for the challenge. So with that, and I know you and Mishaal grilled him. So
a little bit.
Yeah. So why don't we share that interview with everybody right now?
Hey, everybody. We're back. We're here being a very distributed remote type of here, but we are very, very lucky to have a very special interview with you with two lovely guests. One of them is friend of the show, someone you've seen before, Matthew McCullough. And we have an extra special guest, Seang Chau. Did I say that correctly? Chau is... Sorry.
Chau's right, yes.
Chau. Yeah, friend of the show, Matthew McCullough, but I think we would really love, Seang, to hear a little bit from you. What do you do? And I guess who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, hi, I'm Seang Chau, and I've been at Google now for 8 years, working on both Android and Pixel. I just took on a new role a couple months ago as the new GM of Android platform, where we're bringing our product engineering and design functions together under one team. This is something that we've been looking forward to, at least I've been looking forward to for a while, because it's an opportunity for us to do really big things and get things out to our partners, developer ecosystem, our users faster. And I'm really excited about this because there's a bunch of things going on in the industry right now, and this is a great time for us to be working on it.
Congrats on that new role. And you brought up a point that I kind of wanted to touch upon a little bit more about those organizational changes that you just mentioned. I wanted to ask you exactly how are those organizational changes going to benefit the Android platform as a whole?
Yeah, I think the things that we really want to be able to get to our developers and our users will be able to make a lot of decisions to be able to go faster on those things. So bringing those functions together will allow us to move faster, because the things that we really need to get to users faster, especially in this really fast-moving industry around AI, ML, and all the help that we want to be able to get to users. One of the things that we will be talking about today is how we get to that state for our users at high quality so they can do really useful things.
Well, speaking of going faster, go ahead, Huyen.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to give a chance, though, just to give, I know, like I mentioned Matthew McCullough, friend of the show, but Matthew, I wanted to give you a chance. Friend of the show, I wanted to give you a chance to speak to all of our hopefully new listeners that haven't gotten a chance to meet you yet, Matthew, about what do you do in terms of the Android world.
Cool. Hello, Android faithful listeners. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking after with a large team the Android developer experience, and so effectively, if you develop for the Android platform, we try to build the tools and the toolkits and the experience and the docs and DevRel and events that all make that easy to do and an overall delightful experience.
And actually, I'm feeling very lucky because Thursday I'm going to be at DroidCon London, which I believe also Matthew will be. And I think you also are going to be kind of, I guess, having a kind of co-production with DroidCon London by having also a release of the Android show. Is that right? This Thursday or today or
totally
October
true.
31st? Yeah.
Exactly. What even is time in this global distribution? By the way, Playtime Milan, I will then use traditional transportation, an airplane, to get and be there with you at that DroidCon event. But this is very much the case. It actually goes to what we look after. We're trying to meet our Android developers wherever they are. DroidCon is one of those places. And to bring sometimes announcements. We have a few to share there. And then bring some progress, some workspaces, and then just give the opportunity to talk to the product and engineering leads who work on these features. Because often we get really cool feedback, and sometimes we can also kind of give them a few insights on how to use it even better.
Right. So I actually saw some of the teasers that y'all have been putting out on social media about some of the things y'all be announcing. Ooh. You mentioned Gemini and Android Studio. That's a big topic. But Seang also just brought up about Android platform related news. I kind of want to focus on a little bit on that first, because that I think is huge in terms of, it's something that we've never seen before. This moving forward of the major release cycle and also accelerating how many minor releases you're doing with SDK changes. So can you tell us a bit more about the exact changes that you're making to the Android release schedule, including the rationale behind those changes?
Yeah, so as I stated earlier, we want to get things out faster. And we've been working on that for at least a couple of years now, where you saw us going to these continuous beta releases. You saw us going to QPRs. That allowed us to get new functionality to our users faster, but now we really want to focus on the developer ecosystem. How do we get that functionality, especially around AI APIs and those kind of things, to our developers. So moving our launch in by a couple of months next year into Q2 for 2025 allows our OEM partners, our device ecosystem partners, to be able to get that functionality out to our users, lines up more with their device launches, but then gives us the opportunity to look into, hey, can we do even more and get update to developer SDK out twice a year? So we would be able to do that at the major release in Q2 next year. And then for our Q4 release, what we're calling a minor release, we can do more API updates where we can add additional functionality without breaking the existing things. That should really help our developers be able to get more things out to our users. And I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I think always like a big event every year for developers, at least. I'm a developer myself. That's my day job, and is kind of like preparing and prepping and making sure that we're ready for the releases. And so I think I am really excited by the, because I think we always like complain at y'all like, oh, we want this and we want that, right? And of course you're giving us what we want with which is more releases, more, more features, more APIs. But at the same time, I guess it's always a little bit of work making sure that we're caught up for y'all. Are there any other ways that you kind of like foresee like app developers being impacted by these changes in release schedule? Like, are we going to have to make sure that we are not just ready for the major releases, but also the minor release as well?
Yeah, if you go back in time far enough, you'll remember that we actually used to do point releases, and we ended up. I think what happened there was because we would not only add new APIs, but actually change existing functionality of APIs or deprecate APIs. It was really hard both for our OEM device partners to keep up and for our developers to keep up because the changes were just happening too quickly. I think this time around, we're doing it a little differently, right? We're going to make the changes to our APIs only at the major releases. And then for the minor releases, we're going to do non-breaking changes. So you shouldn't have to do too much as a developer for our minor releases because we're only adding API functionality. We're not going to change or modify any existing APIs, and we're not going to deprecate any APIs. So anything that's targeting that SDK level for the major release should be fine. And then if you want to take advantage of the new APIs, you can.
Beautiful. Good to hear.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, something that I've noticed over the years is that it's really only been Google who pushes out updates that include the changes included in each quarterly platform release. So, given that some of these new QPRs, including the Q4 release, will include new APIs that you kind of want developers to actually try out and use and prepare for in the next major release, why should developers, even bother testing them out, considering that only Pixel devices will be getting these minor releases ostensibly?
I don't think that will necessarily be the case. We're working with our OEM device partners to help them be able to take these minor releases as well, so that it won't just be Pixel devices that will have the new APIs.
That's great. I kind of curious, out of personal curiosity, is the trunk stable kind of initiative that you guys have done to re-architect Android and make it easier to test and flag changes, does that have anything to do with accelerating the rollout and also potentially making it easier for OEMs to accept these changes?
So yes and yes. So from the trunk stable perspective, for whether we're able to do this, I think trunk stable helped us to make sure that the quality of what we're putting together is going to be there, right? We started with the QPRs, we started with this year-round beta to ensure the outgoing quality is there, but then we needed to make sure that from a development perspective and our software lifecycle, that we were building in a way that was upfront high quality. That allowed us to get the confidence to make sure that we could add these APIs, these non-breaking APIs, more frequently throughout the year. So that helps us with that perspective. From a OEM device perspective, we're working with our OEMs to make sure, and our SoC partners to make sure that they're as close to trunk stable as possible, so that there's much less work for both our OEM SoC providers as well as our device providers that they have to do in order to keep up with the releases.
That's great. So I've been following trunk stable quite closely. A lot of Android platform developers have, but as far as I know, Google hasn't put out any sort of like public-facing blog post or anything explaining what this project is and why it's so important. So I'd like to take this opportunity to kind of ask you to give like an explainer to our audience and I guess to the general public. What is trunk stable and why is it such a big deal?
Trunk stable, I think the reason why we haven't really talked about it that much is because it is really very much internal software development lifecycle change that we made. And it shouldn't affect how people think about Android or how we update or the quality, right? It is a way for us to optimize internally. And really, at a high level, it's about how do we ensure that when we make changes and we add new functionality that we're not breaking old functionality, right? It allows us to experiment with long-term things that might take us 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, or a couple of years, add it to the build without breaking existing functionality. In the past, when you try to do that, you can make a lot. As a software developer, you know this. You can have a lot of regressions if you're not being very careful about flagging features on and off. And so, in a trunk stable model where everybody is now building into the same branch, essentially, you need to make sure you have all the tooling and capabilities to keep all of that work separate and independent.
Speaking the truth there, Seang, thank you very much about developer life. So I wanted to kind of go back to some of the other things that you're announcing. So I know that I think everybody, Android faithful, both user and devs alike, know that we are in an age of AI, and of course we've heard a lot in the last year and some change about Gemini. So can either of you tell us a little bit about what we can expect as developers, actually, and not just users, from Gemini coming up?
Sure. I'll take the first part, but Seang can add on. We think about Gemini in a couple of different layers, and the first one that I'll kind of mention is more on the developer tool side of things, because I wake up thinking about how can I help make developers, have a more delightful, more productive, easier day. So how can I make more delightful? I'm trying, and I think I separated into the work into the creative work, which I love doing. Many developers love doing the creative piece. But then there's a category of kind of chores and toil. And no one's told me yet that they want more chores and toil in their life, at least not yet. And so what we're trying to think about is that as a category that we're helping with. Some examples, making sure that you've got a great commit message. We have a study that says 80% of commit messages in open source are non-descriptive. I mean, the volume is just not fantastic. So what can we do there? We can look at what you've changed. We can look at, the intention of what you've changed. We can look at the comments that you've made, and then try to craft a beautiful commit message and still, give you, developer in the loop, the ability to revise and polish it if you want. But now you're already starting from a much better place. So that's a concrete example of reducing that chore and toil and making doing the right thing easier, simpler, faster.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And I've actually used Gemini a bit in my day-to-day Android life. And as much as I think sometimes developers like to kind of do things themselves and control everything, I have to admit, not doing all the chores and doing the fun stuff of the creativity and letting kind of the hard part, I guess we'll say, the thinky part, we'll say, has been pretty delightful. Yeah.
I've got more I can share there too. That's one entry point, because I think almost everybody has had a commit message at some point in time. But the other, and maybe even experienced the benefits. But some of the other places that we're also touching, that we think are chores and toil, is remembering a method signature, right? Autocomplete is not always perfect, but we can get a lot better when we use AI to look at method signatures you've written. So not even just necessarily libraries that you're pulling in. Maybe those can be well auto-completed, but your code, that's another opportunity. And then to go beyond just method completion, but to think about intention. And it's pretty steerable. Some of the fun stuff to do, so maybe kind of a little experiment for those of our devs in our shared audience today, is if you type comments that suggest what you want to do next and then go to get autocomplete, is kind of your way of nudging the model just a little bit and doing the right thing at the same time, because sometimes you don't have the best commented code. So this is now a positively reinforcing loop, where if you type the right comment to describe what you want to happen, you'll get an even better recommendation for the code autocomplete. So 2 for 1.
I like it. So it's like now Gemini is almost becoming your coding buddy, so that you kind of make each other better as you go, rather than just being a strict reference that is a little bit more, I don't know, objective or just kind of neutral. It's kind of like a back and forth, like kind of conversational, just like the other kind of ways that we've been talking about using Gemini.
Very much so. And we're thinking of this across, a whole bunch of surfaces. We did commit message, we talked a minute ago, we talked, code complete, that's kind of another form, but even other surfaces. So some of the experiments that, we're thinking about far into the future is like, Target SDK upgrades. That's a chore that everybody has to do on a yearly basis, looking down in the app quality insights and trying to figure out like, where did that come from? Why is that? Do you have a recommendation where this problem might be coming from? And is it common? So we're really trying to go to every surface, from problem to creation to commit message to I don't remember that over in the chat side, and bring just that little bit of helpfulness that you described so well to all of those various panes and surfaces.
I did want to ask real quick though, because again, like as I mentioned, even when you give us shiny tools, we still have like, certain ways that we want to do things, or we like to keep a little control. I know that kind of most teams that I've worked on, we've kind of inserted a lot of our own, I guess, boilerplate or own kind of team ceremony into things. So for example, like, I don't know, so each of us have issue trackers, whether it's Jira, Notion, or whatever you want to use. And for example, we have like customs around adding in like issue numbers into commit messages, or even just like the way that we maybe use like code formatters, because we all picky and we all have certain opinions about how many spaces, tabs or spaces. I feel like that's settled. But so is there a way that we can integrate these kind of practices and preferences in with like the help that Gemini is giving us?
It's a high bar to reach, but we're going to try to get there, and we'll get to it at kind of a few steps at a time. I think in terms of the, let's say, bug number being referenced, you actually see that already happen a little bit today, even without us doing an explicit feature for it, because it's often mentioned in people's comments that they put in there, or maybe some of the roll-up commits that are going to that point. So there's a way that the AI model, in looking in the context, might already bring that into the commit message. We don't have any plugin directly though that connects to those systems, so I'll put that on the feature backlog to think about for that one. The second piece is, though, for styling, I can say a little bit more. We have started thinking about what are some of the system level prompts, the system prompts that you might want to put into Gemini and Android Studio that would generally steer the whole experience. Much like people are creating bots and gems, like you'd create gems on the public Gemini that people chat with today. I think that looks to be a fruitful pursuit for us, and that would give you the ability to steer to style and preference, much like you would, setting up a linter prior to the AI era for particular code styles. So
You just brought up an interesting,
not fully there. Love the ideas, and we accidentally already have made some incremental progress, and we're going to make intentional progress in some of the other areas.
Either is great. Accidental, intentional. We accept all improvements. I love it.
Some of both.
Just to make sure, did we decide on tabs or spaces?
I'm sorry.
What do
Right
you
now,
think?
We have a great working relationship, at least between Ken and I, and I'm going to keep it there.
Yeah. This is like serial commas, right?
Yeah, totally.
We're just not going to touch it.
I'm gonna let but Huyen, you can certainly have a preference, and so can Mishaal. But for you and ICN, it's off limits.
Yep.
So you brought up an interesting point at the end there, Matthew, about prompts. And I wanted to ask you a bit more about that prompt library feature that you're announcing. Exactly what kind of prompts do you think developers will be saving or reusing frequently using this feature?
I've got a couple of ideas for this, but some of the ones that we've seen is like taking a code and removing recursion from it would be an example for this case. Make something inline, but where it's grabbing potentially fragments of code from across multiple files. We've seen some of these things. We've seen hints of these. Like, these are not brand new ideas in the actual explicitly coded functionality of IDEs in the past. Right click on a method and extract or the like. But what becomes difficult is when that starts to become spidered across your code base, or when it's not a simply one link, one clear kind of step to take. So I think you probably have seen many of the ideas that we want to explore without making this an announcement or reveal today in the right-click menus before, but where those couldn't quite get the job done, AI is empowering us to be able to look across the entire code base to do that. We have some ideas in the future too that go a little bit to some of the enterprise discussions that we'll talk about and make some announcements in a few days. But using more context of your code actually gives us, when this goes back to your question, gives us more style, intention, and even naming. And our method rename function right now, we're getting delightful feedback on that, because instead of just, assuming like fill in the blank or use the things that were in the call stack above it, it's actually using comments, descriptions, and surrounding methods to derive intent. And one example that I saw from a friend of mine is they were working on a podcast app, and it used the specific intention that they had in the method names. And it was just cool to see it not just be generic, but actually be specific to the type of app that they were building.
I love it. I did want to go back to, and I apologize, Matthew. Seang, if you weren't aware, I feel like Matthew's probably heard questions like this from me over the years. So I'm sorry, and going to introduce you to the questions about privacy and proprietary code, because I do see, like, a lot of times we do feel like, especially for Gemini tools, we get the most bang for our buck when Gemini is able to kind of introspect our project and our code. But of course, for those of us that work at big corporations, there's always questions of privacy, proprietary code, and things like that. And I think even with prompts, obviously the code has a lot of information in it, but even by extension, prompts could potentially contain proprietary business and engineering information. What can we tell our managers and stakeholders to assure them that, that information is safe, even when we're taking advantage of, Gemini and prompts?
That's great. Well, I'm going to walk a very fine line to make sure that my colleagues are delighted with me, but stay tuned for a conversation coming up at the DroidCon for the big reveal of this. But what we are thinking about is kind of two categories. The one where you're working maybe more on open source or less sensitive code bases, and the second category being exactly what you described. Highly sensitive code bases, that need the full privacy and trust, never to be used for, a training or public enhancement, and where you have absolutely all the promises that would traditionally come with a cloud offering. And what we've done, what you'll hear about this week, is that we've partnered with Google Cloud to use the same promises that they give for their other services, and being able to carry it with Gemini and carry that over into Gemini and Android Studio.
Okay, well, thank you both very much for answering all our questions about, the Android platform news and also Gemini and Android Studio. Before we wrap things up, there is one last question that I wanted to ask, and it's about this little guy here and the dessert that he'll be eating next year. Is Baklava really going to be the dessert name for the next major Android release?
Wow. Yeah, so just like mainline, which, I'm sorry, not mainline, just like trunk stable, which is very much an internal thing. The dessert names are still very much an internal thing. Our internal developers, they really love it. And yes, this year we did decide to start with B, because why start with A when you can start with B? No, I'm just kidding. So last time we were at Cupcake, where we started with C. So I guess now we can start with B. And then maybe when we roll over again, we'll do an A. But baklava, it's a great dessert, and maybe it will be baklava. I don't know. What do you think, Matthew? What should we do?
I love desserts in general, so pretty much whether it's A to Z, I'm in.
Awesome. I really did want to hear what Matthew or Seang, you would think a good X starting dessert would be, but we'll let you think about that. And hopefully next time we talk to you, you can let us know. But we really want to thank you for your time. Like, obviously Matthew was in like about 5 different places at once. Seang, we really know that you're probably really busy, like in this new role, getting your hands and everything. So we really appreciate you taking time to come and talk to the Android faithful. And this particular Android faithful dev is super, super grateful for all your work. So.
All right, great.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us. And what a nice opportunity to talk to the people that every day we get up and go to work to serve.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And we'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.
All right. Great chat, Win. And Mishaal was not here, but great job getting the news directly from the source. And huge thanks to the team over at Google for reaching out to us and inviting us to chat with Seang and with Matthew. We really appreciate the continued. They recognize that we are the Android faithful. We're very lucky for that. So
yeah,
awesome.
I feel super grateful about that. How do you guys feel about the kind of shifting schedule of this all?
I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
I think mostly and I think developers are more worried that with the minor release, we'll have to just have one other thing to support. But I think they're trying to, and I definitely have been like critical, or not critical, but unsure about the kind of verticalization of Android with Pixel and the hardware, and like whether we're going to lose out or something's going to change. But I do really think that while they're trying to like move forward with their business strategy, they are trying to care for us and make things, not say easier, but like kind of smooth the path for developers to follow along as well, and to kind of go with the new changes. So I'm excited. I think we all kind of like a little bit of regularity and consistency. So even if it's a little painful, like next year, it's worth it in the long run. And I think they've earned our trust as far as I'm concerned. So
and I think it's just as evident of the evolution of the direction they've been taking their stewardship of Android, that they couldn't have done this 5 years ago, right? Because all the work hadn't been done yet to support it, and so now this is the next logical step. And if anything, it just gives Mishaal more stuff to work on more frequently.
Yeah.
So
You're gonna be more busy.
So we want to wish Seang a ton of luck in his new role. We think it looks like Android's in good hands, and we look forward to chatting with him again in the future. Hopefully, we'll do another I/O sit down or things like that at events. It's always great to hear directly from the source of the folks who are working on this operating system that we have pretty much. I mean, it's one of the longest relationships I have in my life, so I'm glad someone's taking care of it.
Totally.
I mean, hell, I've been married to Android longer than I've been married to my wife. So. All right, good stuff.
Right on. Well, thank you again to both of them for the interview. Thank you to both of you for recording a day earlier than we normally do.
Of course.
Wynn, what do you want to leave people with?
I'm an Android developer. I do talks. Actually, that's why I was in London last week. I was doing a talk at DroidCon London. Funny story. I was early to take the tube to where they were doing DroidCon London, but there was a fire further up on the line. And so I'm standing on the platform for like 20 minutes, and I genuinely thought I was going to be late for my talk.
Oh
so
my
actually,
goodness.
I took a selfie on the stage, and I actually, Jason, if you don't mind pulling it up really quick, I think you can tell on my face that I was like more than a little panicked right before my talk, because I thought for sure I was going to miss it, because there's this kind of strain in my face that I didn't expect. Like, I'm happy I made it and I'm here. Actually, my Whoop recorded a workout in like the 15 minutes I was panicking on the station, and then that workout got uploaded to Strava, and I got kudos from like other people, like, good job on your workout. I was like, no, that was panic. So I did this kind of things. The talk video will be out at some point. Actually, my husband Josh is somewhere there in the front. But yeah, randomlytyping.com for all my talks. And at Queen Code Monkey at places. If you're an Android dev, the whole Android fam has started migrating over to Blue Sky. So I will say that, I'm at Queen Code Monkey over at Blue Sky, at Queen Code Monkey at AndroidDev.social, and just find me other places. But yeah, it's my job. I love it. It was a really great time with the Android fam. I hadn't been to DroidCon London since before the pandemic. It was a great time. It was a really great time.
Now I want a panini.
I haven't had breakfast yet, so I just think
Panini,
about
a baklava.
Dessert.
All the things, apparently. Ron, what about you?
Not much. Just a reminder to everybody to go to bit.ly/AndroidFaithful-survey. Tell us a little bit about you. And then go to patreon.com/AndroidFaithful. We love your support. Thanks for listening to the show. Thanks to Google. Everybody's awesome. So
everybody's awesome. Yes, indeed. And I mean, for me, you can just go to youtube.com/@TechSploder, and then you won't miss any of the videos that I'm working on. I have some things in the works. Oh, dang. That video did well, the Oxygen OS video. If you want to know all about Oxygen OS 15, I've got a video for it. Apparently, a lot of people have seen it. I'm really happy about that. As for this show, we do this show usually every Tuesday evening. This week, of course, like we said, we're releasing it on Tuesday. We recorded it on a Monday, so thank you for a little bit of the time warp. But we will be back next week on Tuesday with our usual live production, our live show approach, and releasing the podcast shortly after. If you need to know anything about this show, really all you need to know is androidfaithful.com, which is not just a place that we publish the podcast, which we do, but it's also where we're adding a lot more writing to the site.
Yep.
And so it's a lot more than just a podcast website. We actually have articles. Mishaal, I'm posting, when I do reviews, I'm putting that up there. Winscott interviews. Ron does some writings as well for the site. I mean,
we got a review coming up. Yep.
Yeah, we got more coming to the page. So androidfaithful.com.
I'm also constantly Mario in the early Mario Brothers with like the fixing the pipes behind the scenes. Right now, my latest hill to climb is I'm trying to get us into Google News really hard. So I'm working on our sitemap and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we're working on it. So we're getting there.
Ron knows what he's doing. It's good to have you.
I'm trying.
Commanding the ship from behind the scenes. And also, just real quick, if you didn't know, you can support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/AndroidFaithful. You can support us on AndroidFaithful.com as well. So either way works and gets you access to all of the similar perks and everything. So please do that. That'll help us continue to do what we do each and every week here on Android Faithful. And I think that's about it. Thank you so much for watching, for listening. And we'll see you all next week on another episode of the Android Faithful podcast. Bye, everybody.